Class is now in session. I am Professor Hockey, and today we're discussing the game between the Sharks and the Golden Knights, in which the Sharks managed to win 4-3 in overtime. The Sharks ending a 7-game losing streak with this victory, and this puts them up to 97 points in the standings, which allows them to secure first round home ice advantage in what will likely be a first round matchup versus these Golden Knights. So certainly very key to have that home ice against these Golden Knights, who now find themselves on a 5-game losing streak of their own, their first 5-game losing streak in their entire history. Of course, that's only this year and last year, but still. So the Golden Knights having their own struggles. So come first period, the Sharks once again out of the gate, just not getting it done for whatever reason. The Golden Knights get a goal in the first 5 minutes. This comes from William Karlsson, the only Karlsson in this game, even though come playoff times it's very possible that there's 3 Karlssons in the game. And it ends up being a 1-0 lead for the Golden Knights at the end of the first period. Not a terrible first period by the Sharks by any means, but they just couldn't seem to beat Malcolm Subban. Come second period, the Sharks doing an okay job, but early on it seemed like the Golden Knights did have a bit more of the momentum. However, the Sharks get the game-tying goal off of a beautiful move from Tomas Hertl, his 35th of the year, as he moves somewhat close to 40 goals. I don't know if it can happen. He would need 5 goals in these last 4 games of the season. Possible, but maybe not that likely, but still a fantastic season for Tomas Hertl, as he was dominant in this game. It would be the Golden Knights, however, who would get the next goal. That would be from Cody Eakin, and while the Sharks, I felt like, were the better team in the maybe latter half of the second period, they couldn't get another past Subban, and so they moved into the third down 2-1. However, the only other win the Sharks had this season against the Golden Knights, they were trailing 2-1 in the third period, but 2 quick goals allowed them to take a 3-2 lead, and it looked like that may have actually happened again here, as Evander Kane gets the goal to tie it up, and just a couple minutes later, it's Marc-Edouard Vlasic right off the faceoff to take the lead 3-2, but it would not be sort of a repeat of that other game, as 30 seconds later, Shea Theodore decides to do his best Vlasic impression by blasting one in from the point right off the faceoff, and we end up going to overtime tied at 3. But because the Golden Knights took a late penalty in that third period, the Sharks come out in the overtime, they work it over the Brent Burns, and as he has done so many times in his career, I believe now he leads the NHL in power play goals for a defenseman in all of its history, with his 14th of the year and his 14th overtime goal. As I said, we've seen it so many times on the 4-on-3 from the point, the one-timer, he beats Malcolm Subban, and the Sharks end the losing streak. First thing to talk about would be Martin Jones, and Jones I thought was okay. I don't think he was very good, even though he does get the victory here tonight. I thought he had no chance on the Cody Eakin one. The William Karlsson one, this was definitely a tough save to make, but especially early on in the game, you probably want to see your goaltender make the save. And then the third one, while Theodore's shot was good, this wasn't through much traffic. This was not like a knuckle puck like Vlasic's was. It doesn't go off of anybody. So you'd like to see Jones be able to make that save as well, especially since his team just took a 3-2 lead, their first lead of the game. So Martin Jones, no soft goals, I would say, but still not being able to come up with some huge saves. However, it is enough, I guess you could say, with Malcolm Subban maybe not playing that great, that the Sharks still managed to get the points, but it is still maybe a bit of a worry moving forward for the Sharks. Next, I will talk about the lineup, because there were a couple of lineup changes here for the San Jose Sharks in this one. They bring in Michael Haley in favor of Lukáš Radil, and they bring in Dylan Gambrell in favor of Melker Karlsson. I think Karlsson was injured. I'm not 100% sure, as I don't think Karlsson would sit out, for any other reason, and bring in Dylan Gambrell. Gambrell really didn't get much done in this game. Michael Haley obviously brought in to be a bit more of a physical aspect, and he was throwing his body around a bit. Wasn't super impactful necessarily, but I guess it was nice to have him there to counteract, the Bash brothers of Ryan Reeves and William Carrier on that fourth line. The Sharks also had Donskoy with Kane and Hertl, and he ends up getting moved up to the first line in exchange with Nyquist. So Donskoy ended up with Meyer and Couture by the latter half of the game, while Kane and Hertl played with Nyquist. Donskoy actually looking okay in this one as well. Still nothing amazing, but you could still see some elements from his game that can maybe give hope here for these last couple games of the regular season as well as into the playoffs. Next, I will talk about the Sharks' own Bash brothers in this game, Evander Kane and Timo Meyer. I thought this was the perfect game to get Evander Kane back into game form. He has seemed sort of out of it in these past few games, and again, you can't really blame him for that, but this was his style of game, a hard-hitting, playoff-like type of atmosphere. He really gets into it. He gets a goal in this one, and it's a huge goal that tied the game at 2 in that third period. He threw his so many hits. I think he had 9 hits on the night, and even more so is that, again, he gets back into the game form, and I think now moving forward, Evander Kane should have a ton of confidence in these last few games. He'll need it at least for tomorrow night against the Calgary Flames, but Evander Kane is looking good in the playoffs, and he has been an effective force against the Golden Knights at times. He was not able to do that in the playoffs last season due to, he was in the lineup, but he was mostly injured, so he didn't really get to do much. Hopefully that won't end up being the case in this incoming first round matchup, because he's definitely a huge part of the way the Sharks can actually win against the Golden Knights. Also have to mention Timo Meyer, who he himself had 10 hits in this game. He did not get a goal, but he was still very impactful on the ice. Another player who was able to match the Golden Knights' intensity when it comes to that physicality coming from not just their fourth line, but some of their top defensemen like Engelland. Braden McNabb did not play in this game, but McNabb is certainly a factor at times physically. And so both Kane and Meyer, you do have to credit for really getting into this one, especially since this is a regular season game. Maybe not as much hype as a playoff game, but on a 7-game losing streak, all the players showing up here against the Golden Knights, and it was impressive to watch. Not just Kane and Meyer, but I've really thought a lot of players for the Sharks were locked in for this one. Next, I will talk about the playoffs. As I said, the Sharks locking in the home ice advantage here and the likely face-off against the Golden Knights. And if this game is any indication of what we will see, it is bound to be one of the better first-round series, not just this year, but we've seen in a while. So many people in the mainstream hockey media, of course, you'd expect it, are talking about the Toronto-Boston first-round series. And of course, that's going to be a great series. But I would not underestimate just how intense this Sharks Golden Knights series will actually be, and you could definitely argue that this would probably be the best must-watch series of the first round. These two teams, both very, very good, both with some high aspirations. The Sharks looked like a great Stanley Cup contender. The Golden Knights were the Stanley Cup finalists just last season. The Golden Knights eliminated the Sharks in the playoffs just last season in the second round. So there is a lot riding on this series. It looks like it's going to be intense, not just play-wise, as both teams very skilled, but also physically. Just so much physicality happening in this game. We had a fight. We had multiple line brawls. One during a commercial in the first period. Another time there was some fighting going on, and so these teams clearly dislike each other, and with the Kings and the Ducks both sort of falling off, the Kings last in the Western Conference, the Ducks joining them basically in that basement area, the Golden Knights seem to be popping up as maybe the Sharks' main rival here. In the Pacific Division, the Calgary Flames are certainly there, but I really feel like there is something between these two teams because of the playoff series they played last season, and it's looking like it's going to be one of the most exciting first-round matchups of the year. But that will do it for this review. As I said, the Sharks will be back in action tomorrow. They'll face off against the Calgary Flames. The Sharks technically still have a possibility of passing the Flames, but the Sharks would have to win out the year, and the Flames would have to lose out, so it's extremely unlikely to happen, but still a huge statement game for the Sharks. They can carry the momentum here from this victory against the Golden Knights into that one. I believe the Calgary Flames' most recent game was a 6-1 victory as they ended a 2 or 3 game losing streak of their own. So both teams coming off big wins for themselves, and we'll see how the Sharks match up against the top Western Conference team. Class dismissed.